So I'm Erik Wilde. I work at Axway as a catalyst, which is a small team of people who are all about API strategy management and these kind of things. About 3 years ago now, we wrote this book, back then with my team of people at the CA API Academy, Mehdi Medjaoui, Ronnie Mitra, and Mike Amundsen. And that came out a little under 3 years ago. And recently we decided that, yes, an update would be in order. So there's a new book coming out right now, or a new edition coming out right now, and I'm excited to talk about this new edition a little bit. So what was the idea behind the original book, Continuous API Management? The idea really was that one of the challenges that organizations are facing today is not so much working with single APIs, but more like how to work with entire API landscape. So really looking at the whole process of not just what is an API good for, how do I design one, how to use one, and so forth, but also how do I scale this practice throughout the organization so that I end up with this whole landscape of APIs. And back then when we started writing it, which by now I think is about 3 years ago, there was not much around in that space. There was a lot about API design and these kind of things that looked at individual APIs, but our goal really was to have a little bit more holistic view and not just look at individual APIs, but in particular look at those people and processes and problems in organizations where the question is, how do we use APIs throughout the organization? What does it take? What do we need to take into account? What do we have to monitor in terms of, what's going well, what's maybe not going so well? And that was the original motivation that we had when we started writing that book. Yes, it's a little bit hard to really choose tooling, to choose the way you want to go. And it can be a problem to maybe not plan enough or to plan too much. So that's definitely the case. And one of the things, for example, we did in the book was we never really talk about specific tools, because we always thought that picking specific tools is something, of course, that is important, but it's not something that should be the main thing that you do. The main thing that you do is really to think about, what are you doing? Right? Driving it from why am I even doing it? And then thinking about, what are you doing? You want to build a landscape. You want that landscape to evolve. You want that landscape to be open. You want that landscape to be something that can evolve over time, maybe embrace different API styles, all these different kinds of things. So these are the things that you want to do. How to do it then with specific tooling is something where we always thought this is not something we want to address. This is something that's going to get outdated more quickly. This is also something where very quickly you run into issues of, have we really discussed all the relevant tools and so forth? And I think in the end, our main message in many parts of the book is to say, avoid painting yourself into one corner. Don't think about too much maybe how you can do it now, and even maybe how you can do it now in the next year. Always think about, is that a decision that long-term really makes sense? And where also maybe at some point in time, I can change my mind and do something differently. And that is the way how we try to focus the book, is to really focus on a lot of what are the important things, and to not really focus on how can you really make those things happen. Again, I think the most important thing you have to keep in mind is always to make sure that you always think about, how much am I coupling myself to a certain way of doing things? And this idea of coupling, I think, is very important in the API space, to always think about, how can I remain open for new possibilities when I want to maybe change how I define APIs, change how I test APIs, change how I secure APIs, change how I document them, all these kind of things. And And in many cases, I think the best way to do that is to always keep in mind that all the things that you have to do could also be done in different ways, right? And then to go back to this thing I talked about already a little bit, to always think about how hard would it be for me to change the way I'm doing that now? And I think if you can always answer this question saying that it may be hard, but it wouldn't kill me, right? I wouldn't have to fundamentally change everything that I do. Then I think you're always kind of on a good path, right? If on the other hand, you have certain things where you would say, there's no way for me to change this ever, right? And that probably would not be a good sign. So I think always thinking about how hard would it be for me to exchange or to change the way how I do things? If that's a question where you can say, yeah, it might not be pleasant, but I could realistically do it, then I think you're in a good position. There definitely is something like changing too fast as well. We all know that nowadays things are changing very quickly, technology is changing quickly, the competition around us is changing quickly, the markets are changing more quickly. So there is a lot of change momentum, so to speak, which means organizations have to become better at changing. And I think that's kind of a trivial thing right now to say. But then the question also is, can you kind of change yourself to death, or like invest too much into change and not enough into actually solidifying how you create value? And I think there definitely is such a thing. It is a tricky balance to get right. And most organizations that I work with probably are more on the side of not changing quickly enough, or also not changing their mindset enough that change is also something that you can do incrementally and experimentally. I think this is something to always keep in mind, that change always also should be like an explorative process, right? Where you say, oh, we'll try this and we'll try that and we'll try that. And whatever works best then is like our path forward. So I think this is actually something that is almost more important to understand, that changing can be in smaller steps and doesn't need to be like these huge kind of revolutionary things that maybe organizations were going through in olden times. But yes, organizations, I think, can change too quickly, but I think that is not really a risk we have to be concerned with so much. I think we really have to focus more on helping organizations to change in an easier way, in a more iterative way, so that change just becomes something that they see as something that's natural for them to do. I think that is really the most important part. Change should be something that organizations are just doing, and then they can kind of dial it in how quickly they want to change. So I think the topic in itself is something that has still a lot of relevance and will remain to have a lot of relevance going forward. But it's a second edition, right? To be perfectly clear about this, right? It's not a new book. It's a second edition. We all went through it. So there's a team of us of 4 authors, right? Mehdi Medjaoui, Ronnie Mitra, Mike Amundsen, and myself. So we all went through it and updated those things, where after it has been around now for 2.5 years, roughly, where we said, okay, this is something where we could do it, make it a little bit better. I added a chapter on API styles because, for example, I have seen that with the whole event-based APIs becoming very popular, this is something that maybe is a little bit more interesting for people, understanding the difference between different API styles, what are they even, which ones are around, and so forth. But in the end, right, it is a second edition, so it still is very much the original book, but it's just that we thought it's something that still will remain relevant for quite a while. Thanks for listening. I hope when the book comes out, you'll get one and you will make me rich. But more seriously, go and check it out. It's already available as a preview on the O'Reilly website. So if you're interested in just looking at some of the chapters, you can already get an online version. And make sure to subscribe to my social feeds, of course, where you will definitely find out very quickly when it's released, probably around November. But until then, thanks a lot for watching this video, and I hope to see you out there somewhere. Bye-bye.